as always, want to acknowledge that for UW-Tacoma, which is where Puget Sound Institute sits, we learn, teach, work, and live on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, and that in particular, our campus is situated on the traditional lands of the Tulalip tribe of Indians. And we recognize that this is a difficult and painful history, and we understand we must play an active role in remembering not just what happened to Indigenous communities post-settlement, but also the rich history that existed long before colonization. And this land acknowledgement is just one act in an ongoing process of honoring the past while working together with local tribes to build a more inclusive and thoughtful community. And I think for today, particularly excited to be learning from the leadership from the Tulalip tribes in terms of the beavers and their roles in the ecosystem, as well as how we navigate relocation with that. But now we're going to dive into the fun, juicy part of things.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Jasmine Burries. I am an assistant wildlife biologist with the Tulalip Tribes of Washington, and I work for the wildlife program. My pronouns are she, her. And so today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the partnership that we have with Beavers and give you a bit of an inside look at the Beaver Project as it's been going on for, this is our 12th year. And so, yeah, today we're gonna go over Beaver's ecological role. And then we'll talk a little bit about our decision-making process in management of beavers and their habitats. And then we'll talk a little bit about some lessons that we have learned over the years of this project. So yeah, we'll start off talking about beavers and how they are ecosystem engineers. Beavers positively affect the hydrology of the waterways that they live in because due to their habit of needing to change the landscape around themselves, they build dams to help restore and storage water on the waterway that they're in. They also cut trees and eat trees within the surrounding area of their homes, and that opens the canopy and helps to increase the biodiversity of the flora and fauna of the area. And then they also have a tendency to dig and make canals, which can help increase the riparian complexity of the area. And all these things help to enhance the habitat around themselves. And beaver dams also help to accumulate sediment that is flowing through the system. And that helps to maintain minerals and nutrients that are essential for the system and helps to retain them, especially during high flow events, so that they stay in the system rather than being washed out. And they also help us to become more resilient to climate change. By storing this water, we're able to work better during the drought time of the year. So during like the summer when things are hotter. And this is coming more and more apparent as our climate is getting hotter. But they also are very great firefighters. When fires come near beaver complexes, they tend to act like a stop sign. So the near area that has soaked in the water from their beaver ponds, and they are able to help retain carbon that falls from the ash and filter it for the water that goes downstream. Beavers are also big keystone species. They help increase fish abundance within a system and give salmonids the retreat that they need in slow spaces within these waterways, especially during the spawning season, and it creates great rearing grounds for juvenile salmonids. And while they are eating and removing some trees within the canopy. This is benefiting a lot of amphibians, and especially a sensitive species that we have in Washington. The Oregon spotted frog benefit from beaver habitat because they are opening the canopy and creating warmer water, which is important for the Oregon spotted frog. And we have also found that there are 4 times as many small birds within and around beaver complexes. Um, and when beavers are opening up the canopy and allowing more smaller vegetation to grow in, this also encourages animals like deer and elk to move into these territories because water is an important part of their life cycle, but they can also access more food. And this also creates more habitat for other aquatic mammals such as otters, minks, weasels, and muskrats. And beavers are pretty good roommates. And we have found that muskrats tend to live within lodges and beaver dens as well. Beaver ponds also create more macroinvertebrates and open the availability for various species to thrive, which in turn creates food for juvenile salmonids. And interesting enough, these beaver ponds also have fewer mosquitoes around. And so just to give a little backstory on the Tulalip Beaver Project as a whole, it came to life in 2014 after our former Treaty Rights Director, Terry Williams, attended a salmon restoration summit where attendants were asked to dream of new and less expensive ways of addressing salmon decline on a landscape scale. And so it was interestingly enough too that during the time period that came up with this idea, relocating beavers on the west side of Washington was actually illegal due to the Washington State Beaver Bill. But because Tulalip is a federally recognized tribe, we were able to operate under our sovereign rights of a tribe to restore and create salmon habitat within our right to manage lands that are open and unclaimed. And an area that is public lands that we tend to work on is within the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. And through our longstanding memorandum of agreement, the Forest Service co-manages these lands with us for cultural and resources. And under this agreement, they agreed to be the recipients of the beavers that we were relocating. And right now, we only relocate on Forest Service land, but we have been in contact with other public land managers to hope to reach the landscape scale intent of this project. And there were a couple of objectives that we set out to fulfill at the beginning of our project that we still go back to and assess. As the Snohomish River is the second largest salmon producing river in the Puget Sound, and all 5 species of salmon can be found within this river system. And so our first objective was to characterize the current population levels within the Snohomish River watershed. We then had the second objective to relocate beavers that were seen as nuisance beavers in the lowlands and take them to vacant habitat within the watershed. And to just get a better understanding of the hydraulic and ecological benefits that beavers bring to help reduce climate impacts. As before the inception of the project, we did see literature that told us that we were transitioning from a snow-dominated to a rain-dominant basin. And the decrease in summer precipitation and increased winter precipitation, also some lowland flooding. We just knew that there were some great restoration projects that were being funded within the Snohomish watershed. And to address these concerns, we started to help this by actually addressing watershed scale impacts by implementing the Beaver Project. And so we were just looking to fulfill a void that was on the landscape. And so little is known about the overall beaver population in Washington. And so from what we know in the past came from landowner records and complaint calls. And that began to skyrocket in 2000 when gripping and leg hold traps became outlawed. And beavers were beginning to be moving into the lowlands and because they offered protection from predators, but infrastructure like culverts, which to a beaver looks like a really awesome dam that just has a hole in it. This just kind of led to a bunch of lethal management due to management alternatives and coexistence not being something that everybody was aware of. And so when we went out to look at the landscape within the Skykomish water basin, we saw that there was about 43% of suitable and occupied areas. And so there was a really large hole that we could fulfill. And so we felt that it was a great idea to go and relocate within this region. And so, how do we even go about finding these sites? There are places that we started to look at, especially in the uplands, because it was a part of their historic range, but they just seemed to be struggling to naturally recolonize this area. And so, the first step of the process of finding steps were looking at a model called the Beaver Intrinsic Model that was created by Michael Pollock of NOAA. And it in itself has some metrics such as stream gradient and stream width. And they, in turn, help us to figure out which areas on the landscape have the potential for beaver occupancy and dam building. And so this model, as you can see from that map that is on the screen, shows and highlights the sites that are of high suitability, medium suitability, up to not suitable at all. And so we would choose these sites, and then we came up with some parameters for visiting the sites and ground truthing them. And we would visit the sites that were high and medium suitability. And we were looking for beaver occupancy, food availability, and diversity, as well as water availability. And so we then went out to these sites and we actually found 91 sites along 32 kilometers of stream kilometers to just verify that these were great sites. And then we showed them to our Forest Service partners, and they just ensured that the sites were not going to impact infrastructure. And we then concluded that the reason why these areas were not occupied was due to just some barriers that they were facing, whether they were physical or ecological, or if beavers were just dispersing upstream. And there definitely was a need for us to be able to help assist them recolonize these areas. This photo in this slide is just an example of when we went out to our sites, we would bring game cameras and set them out at the sites we thought were suitable, and just keep an eye and see who's using these areas because we know that beavers are highly territorial species. So if there was a beaver living at this site, we would not choose this site. And then we'll move on to how we start moving beavers. It all begins with working with municipalities like from cities and counties and even private landowners. And they contact us either via email, from our website or directly contact us. And they let us know that there are some issues that people are facing, whether it be flooding or tree damage, tree removal. And we'll try and talk through what's going on. And then we'll figure out if coexistence or in-place management is feasible. And if so, we will then recommend them to some of our partners at Beavers Northwest and conservation districts like Snohomish Conservation District. And then we will let them continue on that instance. But if we find that that is not the case, we can't do any coexistence, then we will visit the site and just take a look around to verify that the issues are actually caused by beavers. And then if we feel like the beavers need to be trapped out, we will target their whole family group. Or if it's a mated pair, we will try and capture the whole family group because beavers form tight familial bonds and they are happier and succeed better and just tend to stay at the areas that we place them if they are all together and translocated together. And we also, to explain the trapping a little bit more, we will look for these areas that are highly used. So dams are a really good spot that we can make sure that beavers are going to pass by a lot, or streamways that are close to the dams, and sometimes even trails that beavers are using. And we use two different types of traps to capture beavers. We have our, on the left photo, we have our suitcase or Hancock traps, which we submerge partially into the water so that beavers can safely swim straight into these traps and ensure that they are not injured. And another type of trap is on the right top photo, which are have a heart and or box trap. And those ones are typically traps that we use to put in a trail that a beaver is walking in. So not necessarily close in the water, but that just allows us to have a walk-in trap. And you can see that I'm putting some lure or some scent-based product in there to entice the beaver to walk through on some vegetation that they would typically eat. And then we put cameras and watch these traps to ensure that we know exactly when a beaver is trapped and we can go quickly to retrieve them and bring them to our facility for temporary housing. And we try to check these traps also to make sure we are, in fact, capturing the entire family group. And so when we capture a beaver, we will bring them back to the reservation, to our facility, our fish hatchery, and we will weigh them to just get a baseline for their health and take a look over them and assess them to see if they have any abrasions. And we give them like a light chlorhexidine to kind of clean out their wounds. And after that, in the past, we used to collect hair, like you can see in that left photo with Molly, our former lead to the Beaver Project, as we were a part of a study that was trying to collect a genetic catalog of the beavers that we were relocating. We currently don't do this anymore because there's nobody who is actually looking for this data. So there's a hole in some research that anybody might want to collect. And so after we clean beavers and like treat them, we will then take them out of the trap and then entice them into that second photo. It looks like a big frosting bag. So it has the same kind of look. The tip of it is like cut off. And so there is a light at the end of the tunnel when we get the beavers to walk into those bags. And we are doing this especially in cases when we have singular beavers, because we want to ensure that we can try to offer them a mate. And so because beavers are not sexually dimorphic, we have to express a gland within their cloaca and give a whiff to the excretion and identify whether it's a male or a female. And for those that are curious, males smell like motor oil, and their secretion is more of like a thicker and caramel colored secretion, while females smell like rotten cheese, or if they burn your nostrils, um, then you'll know it's a female, and female secretions are more of a viscous and a lighter color. And then after the beavers go through this ordeal, we will then transfer them into a raceway that is full of water, but has a temporary house for them. And then we give them food and check on them daily while we capture the rest of their family unit. And then once we get the whole family unit, we, in the meantime, have been going out to sites that are within the watershed that the beaver was caught. And we just revisit these sites that we have that we think are suitable. But according to the time of year when we capture the beaver, we just want to make sure that there's enough food. There's enough water for these beavers to be able to find cover, and that's a pool that's from 2 to 3 feet deep. And we just want to ensure that the site is still unoccupied. And then we know that we have the site selected for this beaver to move in, or their family to move in. We will take them from the hatchery, place them in our transportation cages, and truck them to these pre-selected sites up in the uplands. And then we place some more game cameras near these sites so that we can monitor them post relocation. And we try and see if they are going to be building any dams, because beavers are highly mobile animals. We don't always see that they stay within the relocation reaches, and it is really difficult to track them with a radio or GPS collar due to their anatomy and because of the abrasiveness of their semi-aquatic environments. So tracking is difficult, but we're working with other researchers to try and see if there are ways to change that. We have tested a couple of beavers by putting epoxied transmitters on their rump, and they are pretty accurate, at least in the estuary. So it'll be interesting to see how they would work out in the forest. But on average, we calculate that from 30 to 40% of beavers will establish and stay in these areas, which is pretty good, being that beavers are highly mobile animals. And so even if a beaver decides to stay or not, we do still see the benefits of reintroducing these beavers into these areas, because it's contributing to the ecosystem's rehabilitation. It's building up the genetic diversity of the local beaver population, and in all, it's benefiting the ecosystem as a whole. But here's a couple of statistics from our relocation from over the years. To date, we have relocated 367 beavers within the Snohomish and Stillaguamish watersheds. And since 2019, about 70% of our sites are actively occupied by our relocated beavers, and about 50% of them have dams built by our relocated beavers. Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've learned over the years. We have studied a number of ecological characteristics over the years. Currently, we are focusing on monitoring beaver presence and mapping the surface water storage of the beavers due to some other unseen benefits. But early on in our work, we partnered with Dr. Ben Dittbrenner to look at some hydrological studies from our relocation sites. And so he was interested in figuring out the impacts that beaver dams brought to stream flow, temperature, and groundwater storage. And he found some pretty astonishing things. On average, our relocation sites stored 22 times more surface area than our control sites. And on top of that, the relocation sites stored more groundwater than surface water. And below the constructed dams, the water temperature was 2.3 degrees Celsius cooler than the above beaver complex. To give you a little bit of example of kind of like our really awesome site here where beavers were building dams. Our site here, Mahoney, we use drones to take photos of the water and surrounding area to just kind of get like a baseline of what things look like before we did any relocations here. So that polygon represents the surface water within this area. And in 2014, when we found this site, it was a small incised stream that had a closed canopy that was just a single age within the riparian zone, and it just struggled to retain water year round. And so in 2015, we placed a family of 4 beavers here. And the next spring, we actually got to see that the beavers built some dams and started impounding water. They opened up the canopy, and we were very excited and very happy to see that. But then when we returned in the spring, we realized that they were gone. And so we were trying to figure out what happened. Like, they seemed like they were happy and doing well, but they probably figured it otherwise and wanted to go explore. And so we just kept monitoring it, making sure that they weren't just somewhere else when we came to visit. But throughout the year, we just concluded that they had moved on. And so we decided to supplement the benefits that were going on here by introducing another family to this location. And so the following year, we relocated 6 beavers to the site, and they ended up creating a network of 12 dams and reconnected historic channels that we didn't see before. And in turn, that created a large productive wetland. And within the year, we just saw that there were spawning salmon returning to the stream, and it serves as a great rearing habitat for hundreds to thousands of juvenile salmon. And just to give you a little bit of a different view of what was going on here at Mahoney, the pictures at the left of the screen just give you an indication of what the stream looked like. And then there was a channel spanning log that was there in 2014. It then became a part of a larger dam in 2017 that was actually over 100 feet long. And so this just kind of gave us the lesson that like beavers improve an area by changing things, but even when they move on, those effects can be felt years down the line. And as we add more beavers to the landscape, we will have less and less suitable sites available, especially as the climate is starting to get hotter and drier. We are noticing that some of our sites are actually drying up sooner than we expected. And so a lot of our work is hoping to start to continue building more structures to help create complexity within the areas that we are working, but also to build beaver dam analogs to help with water storage, and then hopefully use those sites to introduce beavers again to these sites. And it's just helping to teach us to stay flexible and to be able to know that there are still things that we are learning about beavers and just their ecosystem engineering abilities. Um, and so there is another partner that I did not mention earlier, but is a really important part of the work that we do. The public is has been teaching us a lot, and we've taught them a lot over the years. But working with landowners and communities has just helped us to understand kind of like where we are and knowing about coexistence. And so just trying to figure out whether situations for coexistence is realistic. We have seen that people's understanding and kind of willingness to be able to coexist has just changed with like exposure to knowing about alternatives to beaver trapping. And I would just like to definitely give a big shout out to our partners at Beavers Northwest and the Snohomish Conservation District for just all their work that they're doing across Washington with their coexistence tool building and conversations that they're having with people that they are getting calls for help. And so it just helps, all of this just helps to reduce the pressure of lethal management. And it is cool to see that the public is open to prioritizing coexistence. But we do have to consider safety risk. So public feedback helps us to just triage the urgency of situations. And we definitely understand that coexistence only works in some cases, but coexistence does need maintenance. And so, like, if those aren't feasible, we definitely would interfere in those actions and help move beavers to these upland areas. So all of these elements of ecological lessons, the hands-on experience, community feedback directly influence our decision making. But what we've learned from the land, the beavers, and the people who live alongside them shapes every decision we make on where and how we work. So as we look across the Salish Sea, I'm just reminded that restoration isn't something that we do to the land, it's something we do with the land. And beavers continue to show us what's possible when we choose partnership over control. And so I just want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to come listen to this talk and just learn more about beavers. And I want to extend a huge thank you to everybody that worked on this project before I started, and all of our partners, collaborators, and funders that have been involved with the Beaver Project over the last 12 years. And so Tagwisi, thank you. If anybody has any questions.
And thank you, Jasmine. There is a lot of just love for beavers going on in the chat here. It's really great to see. I will remind folks, if you want to raise your hand, we'll prompt you to unmute if you want to ask questions. But in the meantime, we've got a few from the chat. You touched on this a little bit, Jasmine, in terms of the one beaver family that decided they were going to move and a second one coming in. But in general, are you seeing kind of downstream, upstream benefits when you put beavers in, where maybe downstream wasn't as suitable, but once beavers are upstream, that suitability of habitat increases?
Yes, we are definitely seeing a bunch of changes. Mahoney is a site that we don't really monitor anymore because the beavers that we ended up, I think, releasing there in 2017 stayed within the system. But just seeing the way that everything has changed there has been really amazing. And a lot of our other sites kind of go through the relocating beavers there but they don't build, so they just end up moving on. And so we kind of can recycle those sites. And so I think we're kind of more leaning towards doing the BDAs within some sites because we're just not always seeing beavers wanting to build a dam there. And so I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think that definitely does. And I think the other piece of that, right, is just this idea of eventually hitting a saturation point in terms of where you guys are working. And you mentioned being in conversations with other partners and collaborators to be able to relocate elsewhere. Is there anything that this group of beaver lovers can do to kind of help as you guys are exploring those opportunities?
Um, yeah, I think just talking more about beavers and spreading the word of all their benefits just helps us to kind of maybe lean things more in beavers' favor. And so just you guys being here has been a lot of help. And so I hope you share what you learned today.
Great. Love that. We also have a series of questions that kind of relate to the benefits to the ecosystem. So, in particular, folks were curious about the reduction in mosquitoes, and there were some hypotheses that maybe the increase in birds or diversity of other predators is why, but didn't know if you had more insight into kind of what drives that.
Yeah, I think it's just because, like beavers like, I mean, sorry, mosquitoes like to be in kind of more stagnant areas, but I do think that it's because there's a bunch of bird species that are within these areas, and then there's a lot of other predators like amphibians and maybe even sometimes like fish. But yeah, I think that it does come with the biodiversity that beavers bring to these areas or attract to these areas.
Awesome. Great. And along those lines, there was a question about just benefits to salmon, and if you're primarily seeing those benefits be to juvenile salmon or other life stages as well.
Yeah, so we, as a part of one of our grants, we conduct spawner surveys. And so we definitely see a bunch of areas being more open for the adults that are choosing to spawn in these areas, being able to move in. Um, But it is really cool too to also see the juveniles that hang around, mainly coho. Um, but I think even like other animals, other fish species like bull trout really like beaver ponds. And so they live their life within the river system. And so they have different various life stages too that are moving in and out beaver habitat.
Great. One of the questions is about just how you find out about some of these nuisance beavers. You talked about some of the collaborations with conservation districts, but when you hear about them, how you prioritize, recognizing that maybe there are sometimes more requests than capacity.
Yes. So we get the calls and emails, and a lot of times I will just call the person landowner and just give get a little bit more information about what's going on. Um, the priorities kind of lie with making sure that people are safe and not at risk of either losing property due to flooding or the roadways, and trees, if like, especially if they are impacting any buildings or people's access to getting out in and out of their homes. But we also try to emphasize like the ones where we don't feel like there's any wiggle room to kind of compromise with beavers, because we just want to make sure if we are able and can have the capacity that we can help alleviate pressure from lethal management. But we do understand that lethal management is a form of management, and there are times when we know that that's just going to happen, but we just don't have the capacity because we are like a team of mainly three people.
It is amazing how many beavers you all have relocated and the planning and logistics that go into that as a team of three. Very, very impressive.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you. I appreciate that.
Lisa, it looked like you maybe had a question if you want to unmute and ask.
Thank you. I am an observer of beavers in a mill creek, kind of a park. It's not exactly a park, but it's a natural area. And the beaver yearlings routinely get hit and killed when
Um,
they try to disperse because there's really nothing but, roads around their land. And I understand that you focus on family units and pairs, but would you ever consider working with us to get the yearlings to a safe place?
yeah, it's the time of year that's tough for us because we do partner with our fish hatchery, and around this time, they are using all of the raceways that are at the hatchery. So we typically don't get access to the hatchery until May. And this is like a definitely sad part of kind of them dispersing and wanting to find their own homes that I've been trying to figure out how we can reduce this because we do have a couple of beavers that just last year were also hit by cars. And so I kind of debated whether like putting some signs near areas that are going over creeks could help reduce this. But for the Tulalip project, we are not, if it's like, because usually it's kind of like around like now, March to kind of like April when they start dispersing. So I still need to figure out how we can help reduce that.
Well, thank you for having that on your radar. I have one other question about these same beavers. They took down about 30 trees this year, and this is an unprecedented amount of trees in a smallish park, only 70 acres.
Wow.
And we were wondering if perhaps the drought had something to do with that because they did experience some trouble where their underwater entrances to their lodge were exposed during the drought, and they had to move into a second, their extra lodge, and they had to refurbish that quite a bit. So I can understand why they did it, but are you seeing any other increase in beaver tree taking?
Um, that's a hard metric to kind of like measure. I haven't necessarily heard more, but I can definitely see how that could be something that could be happening, especially if they're using it for building material. Um, and yeah, I think that would be interesting to kind of, I'll definitely pay attention to that this year and see if that is something that we're noticing, because that would be good to know, especially as we kind of are entering like drier years down the line. But that's a really good like thing for me to point out. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll just close with because, it's a finite amount of trees in that place and not enough time to grow new ones. I have real concerns about the future for these beavers, but I appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly if Mills Creek is in Snohomish County, is it? Or is it
It
not?
is.
The Snohomish Conservation District has a program where it is beaver based, and so they do a lot of coexistence tools, but they also have the ability to supplement grow um, for areas that are experiencing like a lot of tree damage. So it would definitely be a great idea to reach out to them because they could probably help with supplemented planning at that Mills Creek.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Have a great day.
Awesome. Love the connected resources and some of these real world examples. One of the other kind of themes that's come up in the chat is an interest around just beavers and river otters in particular and how well they coexist or not together in this space.
Yes, sorry. I'm just going to quickly plug in my laptop. It told me that it's about to die.
No worries.
But
I had an old one that, just didn't warn me and it would just die. And so I'm glad that yours at least gives a nice warning.
um sorry, I'm trying to do it at the same time, but
No worries.
a lot of times we see otters and beavers on our cameras, our game trail cameras, at different times of the day. So we'll just see like a troop of otters trouncing around our beaver sites and like having fun playing in the water, messing with great blue herons that hang out at our sites. And so I think they just really enjoy having these pooled areas and all the food that kind of comes with that, with the increased fish abundance at beaver ponds.
Yeah, that's great to hear kind of what you guys have seen across all of these sites. One of the questions was just around the reduction in stream temperatures. That was cool to see, particularly as that's a challenge with climate change increasing. And folks were hoping you could elaborate on kind of the mechanism behind that reduction in stream temp.
Oh, yes. So beaver dams act like speed bumps, and so they slow and spread the water within the vicinity of the beaver pool. And that in turn just helps the water to be able to stay in the system, and the soils soak up those waters and allow the water to kind of go down towards the groundwater and the aquifers that we don't really see. And in doing so, it kind of goes and recharges itself and is able to come back up and enter the system again at a cooler temperature. And beavers tend to build more than one dam. So as the succession of coming from one pond to the next pond, it kind of just creates this kind of like system that it's just getting a bit better as it goes downstream.
Awesome. That's just, I don't know, amazing. It gets back to the excitement about the engineering of all of this.
Yeah, yeah. They're
Yeah.
just so smart and they just are doing it and creating all these great benefits, probably without even knowing.
Yeah. Well, and along those lines, someone was curious very specifically about just the culvert side of this. And I know you mentioned that culverts can kind of be attractive to beavers. But if opening up some of the historic channels that otherwise hadn't existed helps to maybe alleviate some of the need for culverts, at least in a short term, or help reduce pressure around that.
Uh, Yeah, I think it does. And then with the like statewide like project to help increase the size of the culverts, that is kind of, was more based to help salmon be able to return back up to their spawning grounds, but in a way that also makes it a bit less of a problem for beavers to be able to plug them up. And I think just all of those things are really connected, and having our beavers up in the uplands, creating more historic channels. We're able to see water enter in areas and stay in areas that they haven't been in a while.
Yeah, great to hear that those larger culverts are both less likely to get backed up, and then also that there is kind of a amplifying supplementary effect with the opened waterways. Um, we also have a question that you may have visibility into in terms of WDFW releasing beaver management guidelines, and if you have any visibility into whether that's happened or en route.
I think it's en route. We had a session where like we were able to create comments and give feedback on the current draft, and so that's still in the works. But it'll be really exciting for it to be made public because it does give a lot of like great like guidelines for how we can work and manage beavers. and their habitats.
Right. Glad to hear you are involved in those iterations and helpful context for the folks on the line. Someone was sharing that up in Canada, they're seeing that adult Chinook in particular occasionally struggle to get over some of the beaver dams. Curious if you guys have experience with that or any reflections.
I know that I don't know exactly how big those dams are, but there are instances where beaver dams can be barriers for salmonids, but being that they're semi-permeable dams and seasonal flows can be helpful for salmonids to cross over beaver dams. I don't necessarily know much about the Canada part, but I know that there could be different years that different parts of the years that beavers can or that salmon can cross over. But I'll look into that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I'll just say for those who are seeing that in Canada, please also feel free to reach out offline for some conversations too. One of the questions in here was also about sounds like you guys worked with some folks in Fauntleroy and had already relocated a beaver and a new beaver moved into that area, but there was maybe some concern about pathogens in terms of not being able to relocate them. Not sure if this rings bells or if you have any visibility into that.
I don't believe that I was involved with the project at the time of that relocation, so I don't have any insight. But I'd be interested in hearing more about that. I am actually going to be attending a beaver disease training next month, so I'll definitely have more insight in that regard. So yeah, just feel free to follow up with me. We have our website that directly sends messages to me, or if you didn't see my email, I can go back to the other slide.
Sounds great. And it sounds timely with the upcoming discussion on beaver disease. So many pieces to be keeping in mind with it, with even just one species and the ripple effects. I was gonna say, Eric Sterner, I know you had some questions in the chat. If you're comfortable unmuting, it might be easier to have you ask those.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just curious about best management practices on fencing protection for seedlings or species selection for replanting, if any at all. And I also put a great link for Project Beaver in the chat.
Oh, so is this a restoration project or just kind of for protecting trees and seedlings that are at a place that you're hoping to protect them?
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Restoration projects
Okay.
adjacent to really active dams, because we're dealing with all kinds of challenges. And so I'm always curious on what folks are utilizing. Project Beaver has some great tips for protection, and that's one resource that I recently learned about.
Yeah. Yeah, I've learned a lot from working with Beavers Northwest about tree protection, in that we just try and make sure that we get very thick fencing, so welded fencing. But it was really cool because last year I attended one of our partners' beaver relocator trainings. They protect larger trees with the same type of fencing, but they actually just kind of use the fencing to kind of make a little cone and dress around larger trees. For and then use like logs and rocks that are nearby instead of like using T-posts. And they found that like beavers don't go and touch those trees because there is fencing that's laying on the ground and they don't like how it feels on their feet. But for species that I recommend, depending on like where exactly you are, like willow is the most nutritional tree species to beavers. So willow is a really great one. And it also fares really well with like beaver herbivory because they will come a little bit more stout and they don't tend to be as affected by beavers. So if they end up getting chewed on, they'll keep growing. And I believe that cottonwoods are also have the same ability as well. Um, but we tend to feed them other like species like alder and vine maple and I think that some like dogwood. But I think that those are all pretty good options. And I'm not sure if I missed a part of your question.
I think that touches on those BMPs really nicely and some good tips. And I'm seeing folks drop other resources in the chat as well for that, which we will be sure to share out with everybody. I know we are pretty much at time, so I'm going to wrap us there. And I will just call out that I hope folks will join us next month. We'll be talking about the impacts on commercial anchoring in British Columbia. And so that'll be March 10th from 12:30 to 1:30. We'll include a link to that event for registration to everybody as we go out. But Jasmine, thank you so much. This has been fascinating and really cool to see and learn more about just the environmental benefits, but also how you guys are really thoughtfully thinking about the management side of this with the relocation efforts and BMPs and partnerships. So thank you for taking the time to share all of your insights.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting us. Really definitely just glad to be here and happy to now be a part of future talks. But thank you all too for your time and all your great questions. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, have a great afternoon, everybody.